everyone. Welcome to FMTraining.tv. I'm Richard Carlton here at FMTraining.tv, where every day at 1 o'clock we're doing awesome live streams and talking about all the cool things that we can do with the FileMaker platform. And so today is a awesome action-packed day. It's our weekly dive into JavaScript and JSON courtesy of Leland Long. Leland Long is an ongoing contributor here at FMTraining.tv. And so he is going to be having a topic today on us as a JavaScript topic, I believe today. Should be interesting. Let me bring up the broadcast schedule and talk about this a little bit. So if you go to FMTraining.tv, hit the button on the left, it's a live training tab. It's going to show you live data out of our FileMaker database. Once again, we eat our own dog food here. We use FileMaker to help propel and run the organization, to also bring this to the conversation. I love the 1 o'clock conversations with everyone because I get to learn things, you get to learn things. I frequently am the recipient of learning. I love to learn. So then tomorrow I get to present on a topic that I've been dealing with, so that'll be pretty exciting. So today is going to be JSON array sorting, JSON difference, things like that. Tomorrow is going to be transient notifications, and Nick Hunter will be back next week. Now, what I want to do is we are soliciting, we're asking you, if you're listening to this, ideas that you have you would like to see in terms of JavaScript, in terms of and/or JSON. For Leland Long and his topics, he's looking for other topics, the things that you would like to learn how to do, right? Maybe something, I mean, I need more of a use case, but maybe we take some data out of FileMaker and we process it in JavaScript, because doing some calculations in JavaScript can be done much, much faster than they can in FileMaker. So there can be a benefit to that. So, if some of you have ideas about things like that, please send us an email to support@rcconsulting.com, and we will collect those together and give them to Leland so we can continue doing this great JavaScript/JSON training. It's really awesome. Upcoming, so tomorrow's conversation is going to be about transient notifications. Tomorrow is a kind of a beginning intermediate conversation for beginning or intermediate developers. I actually been doing a lot of coding. Some of you seen me working in that hangar bay where they're doing maintenance, heavy maintenance on aircraft. And what I've, going back and doing programming every day in the FileMaker platform, development every day, I've gone back and had to relearn things, and I've seen where we have some pretty serious limitations still with the FileMaker platform. So tomorrow we're dealing with one of those limitations, right? And so tomorrow's about transient notifications. What is a transient notification, and how is it useful for me? I guarantee every last person who does development in the FileMaker platform needs transient notifications. It's not like some people don't really need WebDirects, they don't use it, or only some people need like offline synchronization. Everyone needs transient notifications. And so we're soliciting ideas, not so much on my end of things, but for the JSON JavaScript with Leland Long. So every day at 1 o'clock, once again, we're doing this in high definition on YouTube, Twitch, and Discord. You can choose how you want to watch it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to quit sharing my screen. I'm going to transfer command to Leland. Leland is here. Hey, Leland, how's it going?
Howdy. Doing very well.
What are we doing today? What are we doing, and why should I care? Is always the question I ask.
To answer that question, let me go ahead and share screen. We've covered in the past few classes things like the data API and JSON manipulation and understanding how to build it, read it, parse it, do whatever you wish with it. We've even played around with execute FileMaker data API, where we could use one database to talk to itself and get back JSON as a result. So what we're dealing with today is working with JSON, specifically two different problems and a possible solution for both. The first one is sorting an array. And what do I mean by that? If I blow up this picture, it's not going to let me. Well, it helps if I click inside here, then try to blow it up. Hey, that worked a little better, I think, maybe. Oh, kinda. Okay. If you can see this array of JSON data here, you can see 5 objects inside of an array. And if you've taken our previous classes on JSON, that should not be confusing to you. Now, this is just a quick example. Obviously, when you get back results from FileMaker or another vendor, it can be a lot more complex than this, but we'll try to keep it simple for illustration purposes. In this example, we have 5 results here on the screen, and we have 3 different types of elements, or you would consider them to be fields as a FileMaker developer. So the first one would be a created timestamp, the second one would be a note, and the third one would be a number. So the question that I would have you consider at this point is, this is an array, and the array is going to already have a predetermined order. And let's say that that's creation. So if you think about it as in records in your FileMaker database, that would be a table with 5 records, and they would have a creation timestamp, right? And so they would be in creation order without any sort of sort attached to it at all. But let's say, if you look at this example here on the screen, what if you want these resorted? Like, for instance, let's take the easy one first. Let's look at that number field. You can see that we have 5 numbers, 1 in each one, and they're in a mix. They're all mixed up. They're not in any particular order. So what if, hypothetically, you wanted to import this JSON dataset into your FileMaker solution? And when I say import, I just mean, you want to bring this data in and you want to work with it in some capacity. But what if this particular order that comes in is not handy? What if you need those numbers to be in order, for instance? How would you do that today in your FileMaker solution? Well, there's a myriad of different ways, right? But one of them that just quickly comes to mind is you might have a temp table. You might import this as data, one object per record. You might create 3 fields and import each one of these 3 JSON elements into a field. So you'd have a created field, a note field, and a num field. Then you would, in a script, you would probably perform a FileMaker sort by number. And you would tell it ascending or descending, your choice. And you would end up with a found set that's sorted. And from there, inside your script, now you could do something with it, right? Now it's all sorted, and now you could apply whatever business logic you want. So today, that's how you can do it in FileMaker, and so that doesn't seem to be too big of a challenge. But let's say this JSON payload that you're looking at is pages long instead of just one screen. What if it's a myriad of arrays and objects within objects, and further, delving deep down into this? If you were to import that into a FileMaker temp table, now the challenge becomes a little bit more increasing, doesn't it? So this particular add-on that we're going to look at today gives you the option of sorting this JSON array however you wish using pure JavaScript. No extra FileMaker schema necessary. And as you know, in working with JavaScript in the past, that's a pretty fast process. So speed, efficiency, especially with large data sets, that might be one of the reasons why you might choose to use this sort of solution. This one, however, is not going to be sorting. This one's going to be paying attention to the differences between 2 different JSON payloads. So in this example here on the screen, a real simple one, you can see that the one on the left is there's 2 key value pairs in this object. The first key is 1, the second key is 2. And over here on the right, we have the same 2 keys, but the value of one of the keys has changed, right? So it's really obvious comparing these with your eye side by side what the differences are. But we're going to take a look at a tool that will actually help you determine what has changed, especially when you start to work with, like in this second example here, something that's a little bit harder to look at by eye and tell what has changed and what's different. So those are the 2 add-ons that we're going to take a look at today. There was the lengthy answer to your question, Richard. So before we get started, Margaret has fresh links to both add-ons available for you to download at your leisure.
I do. They are in progress.
She will present those shortly. These particular links are both going to go to these 2 pages that you just saw here on the screen, which are my 2 GitHub pages, one for each of those projects. When you download them, they are a FileMaker add-on. And so when you download them and you've unzipped them, you will end up with a file with an extension .addon. And I will show you right now that if you were, at least on the Mac, if you are inside your Finder window, and if you start at the Applications folder and hit Command up arrow, that will quickly take you to your root directory. Current versions of Mac actually make it kind of difficult to get to the root directory, which is where we need to go in order to get to move on. A lot of things are stored in the cloud now, so if you're used to going to documents and backing out, you'll actually end up in your iCloud drive. So to get to the root directory, one of the quick ways that I do it, Applications, Command up arrow, you're there. After that, also on the Mac, if you hit Command Shift period, that will show, it's a toggle. If you hit it, you'll notice that I only have 4 folders showing in the next column. And if I hit Command-Shift period, shows me all of my hidden volumes and files as well. So that's just a toggle. Command-Shift period shows and hides hidden files and folders. And in this case, we're going to go down to the user folder and to your user, whichever one you're logged in as. And you'll notice that if I'm going to hit Command-Period again, Command-Shift period, that you don't see your library folder in your user folder here. And so it's hidden. So the Command-Shift period reveals that. So if you go into your user folder, and then you'll look for the folder called library. Inside there, application support. Inside there, FileMaker. And inside there is your folders for extensions. Now, if you click on extensions, you may or may not have the add-on modules. And if so, there they are if you've already installed some. But now over here in the download, I'm just going to double click on one of these .fm add-ons that you got from GitHub. I'm just going to double click on it. And when I do that, you'll notice that it suddenly, well, not only does it open up FileMaker, but if I go back to that folder, you can see it's actually been added now to that folder. So that's why I showed you where it's actually installed. And I'm going to do that again for the second add-on, just to get them both done and available in FileMaker, and there they both are in my folder. And that's really the only thing that you're going to notice when you first install an add-on, is it's just going to install them in the correct places and it's going to launch FileMaker, but that's all you're going to see visually. So that's really your only clue that something's actually happened successfully. So from there, I'm just going to create a brand new file, and I'm going to make it completely blank. And I'm going to blow past this fairly quickly because I'm assuming all of y'all are fairly comfortable with creating a new blank file. And I'm just going to call this JSON play. And I'm going to bypass the define database and go straight to layout view. And get this full screen here. Since it's floating off the screen, you can't see it. There we go. So this is where everyone is comfortable with standard layout mode. And you'll notice that I have no fields and no objects here currently, and I only have one layout. If I go to the Add-ons tab, it says to click the plus to install. If I click the plus, at the top you get a list of all the pre-built add-ons that are available to you to play with and explore at your leisure. But if you scroll down to the very bottom, you'll see all the custom ones that you've installed. So we're going to start with JsonArraySort, and I'm just going to choose that, and it's going to plop it up over here in this add-on. And you'll notice that I now have two layouts. So I'm going to skip the first layout and go straight to the second layout. And this is all handed to you as if by magic. If we were to look at define database, if I can get zoom controls to disappear, come on, leave, go away, thank you. If I go to tables, you'll notice I have a brand new table with 10 fields and 3 records. And I have a basic relationship with nothing tied together, the original file plus the new one. So that's what has happened since we've clicked add-on. So we got a lot of things for free, just automatically created for us. Now we'll just jump straight into browse mode. And at this point, I'm going to maximize this screen just to get rid of a few distractions. And we'll just have everything side by side. And do we have any questions pouring in yet as far as installing a simple add-on? Is this something you've already covered in previous classes, Richard? Is this all friendly to all of our users?
Well, we've done it, but you know, this show's been going on for 3 years. So the reality is a lot of people missed it or don't remember it, right?
Okay.
So it's always valuable to recover some of this.
Good. Okay. So this is just the demo portion of the add-on. All of the necessary pieces and parts are already in place. So at this point, you can just play around with the demo and then tweak it to your heart's desire. If I go into script mode, there's just 2 scripts that have been added. And let me get the side edge of the window back on the screen. So in this particular add-on, 2 scripts were added. The actual script that does all of the work, and 1 script that handles the result from JavaScript. So if you attended any of my previous JavaScript 101, 102, or 103 classes, a lot of this should look very familiar to you, including the fact that the way that I'm handling working with JavaScript is the same way that I've done before, which is we've got custom JavaScript on one line. We have inserting things into an HTML template, which this should look familiar to you based on previous classes. We populate it into a web viewer. We wait 0.01 seconds, and then we launch the function that's actually in the JavaScript, which in this case is called myArraySort. And that's pretty much what this does. Now, this does a little bit extra work in that it loops through and waits for a response. So That's optional, of course. We didn't really do that in previous versions, but this allows you to kind of try to do things all in one script rather than spread them out in multiples. So the final result we'll see on screen. So let's get to that. So here's that same JSON payload that we looked at in the example at the beginning that I showed. 5 objects with 3 key value pairs in each one. So again, that question that I asked initially is, hey, what if we want to sort this by number? And we want to do this in pure JavaScript and no FileMaker fields or additional tables or anything. So let's go down here. This function that I've provided here in this add-on asks you 3 questions. Well, technically 4. The first one is, hey, you need to provide a JSON payload. So we've got that sitting there. The last 3 questions we need to answer is, what do you want to sort by? What type is it? And what order do you want it to be sorted in? So let's start with that number field. So it's asking for it says date field path, but in this case, it's going to be number field path. So what is the path for the computer to look at this JSON payload and figure out where the number is always going to be? So it's kind of similar with JSON get element function in FileMaker, right? Very similar. So you can see that inside this array, we've got objects. So inside that object, we have 1 key value pair. The key is result and the value is an object. So that's the first part of our field path is result. And then inside of that object, we want to use not the created field, but let's use the field called num. So you're giving it the actual names of the keys is what you're doing right here. So result.num will get you this number field right here. We need to tell it what type it is. In this case, it's a number. And do we want ascending or descending? I would ask Claris, but she doesn't look very responsive.
No, do ascending. Do ascending.
We'll do ascending. And so this is the magical web viewer where all the work is actually done. But we're actually going to get the results from JavaScript, and we're actually going to populate it here in this field over here as soon as I click this button. And there it is. So you can see it was very fast. Number 2, there was no additional FileMaker schema. So no new tables, relationships, fields, so on and so forth. And there it is sorted, ascending, right there, as if by magic. So if I change that to descending and hit sort by date, very quickly we get those in reverse order. So hopefully this is the aha moment where you're shaking your head up and down going, okay, get it. That's simple.
We have a question from Kyle. I don't know if that's like jumping ahead, but I'm going to ask it anyway, and then you can either defer it to later.
Questions from Kyle are always kind of tricky. I don't know.
Can you sort by multiple parameters and multiple directions with this?
No. Now, obviously, you can tweak the existing code to probably make that happen, but right out of the gate, no. It's a simple sort based upon 1 field path. So to do a multiple would take some code tweaking. Impossible to do? No, but a little bit more advanced. You wouldn't just, it would not work right in the box, right? Or right out of the box, whichever way you want to consider it.
Is there anyone who has not had their aha moment yet and is woefully confused?
While you're looking for aha moments, I will just go through the 2 other fields in case it needs a little bit of explanation, in case there's some confusion. I'm going to change this field path from num. Let's change it to that created field. Now that's a timestamp. So I'm going to change the type here to timestamp. And I'm going to pick, which one did you pick, Richard?
It was ascending before. You could do, I guess, descending this time if you wanted.
Okay, we'll do descending timestamps. So I'll hit sort by date. And now you'll notice that it is no longer in numerical order. And if you look at the created dates, you'll notice the date and times are in descending order. Okay. And last but not least, we can do a string sort. And we have a string field conveniently handy called note. And we will just toss that in there. String, we'll make this one ascending, sort by date. Excuse me. Well, the button says sort by date, sort by whatever we've chosen. We chose to sort by note, which is a string, and you can notice that the appending double letters to make things really obvious that the sort worked correctly as it normally would in a FileMaker string, right? So we covered all 3 bases there. So did you have any aha moments or any additional questions?
Dan and Kyle are typing vigorously, but they're kind of slow typers. So.
Well, we'll get, when they have questions, I will ask them. So keep going.
So while they're busy with the questions, let me give you the real world scenario that happened in my world that caused me to create this tool in the first place. So we have a vendor that we work with that pushes API data to us, and we pull API data from them. And we're used to very large JSON payloads that come back from their system. One of the payload responses that we received that we wanted to use was notes attached to an invoice. Needless to say, their notes were created in whatever order that they had created them for whatever their business rules were on their end. But on our end, when we received the array filled with notes for a particular job or an invoice, it was not in the order that we wanted it, that we needed it to be in. So the challenge was in this huge JSON payload that is being populated in our system. How do I get that data in the order that I need it to be? And that's where this tool came about. This allowed me to drill down into the huge JSON payload, pick the exact field that I wanted to sort by, which in our case was a timestamp. And I resorted their incoming data in that array using this tool, and it totally solved our problem. So by the time that I was pulling the notes into our system, it was coming in our business rules logic as far as how those were sorted. So there's the long story of why this was created and how it can be very useful. Now, don't forget, with previous classes that I've been showing you, with the execute data API, with curl commands, with Postman, all of those can return JSON payloads to you from within your own FileMaker database. So this doesn't have to be outside vendor, outside data coming in. This can be your own data in your own database coming to you via the data API, and you can do a custom sort using this type of tool without doing the arguably maybe harder, maybe easier FileMaker standard way of doing things with a sort.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's what Ken, Hot Air Balloon Ken, who's kind of his show is the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday show with Nick. He was asking the question just now about can we permanently resort records using this technique? And so, for those of you who are more beginner type conversation, the world in which FileMaker lives, the fundamental of the database engine is that the records are stored in the database file, the FMP12 file, in the order they're created. Any other sort, like by date or by alphabetical or something like that, is going to be a temporary construct. It's like lipstick on a pig. You put lipstick on, does the pig really have bright red lips? Probably not. And so that's kind of this issue with sorting in FileMaker. And people always ask me this question, well, can't you permanently resort the records in FileMaker? It's a real hack. Well, Ken kind of asked a question. I'm going to read his question to you. Could you use this technique to permanently resort records, i.e. changing the creation order so it's sorted, even when it's not really sorted? I've seen that export and re-import trick, wondering if that would be helpful or replace that, right? I think fundamentally, the first thing I'll do to start this off is that this is a string. It's a single variable or a single string of text, what this stuff is, the JSON is. So if you reorder the text, whatever order, the way it is on the screen that you see right here is the way it would be unless you ran some sort of process to move things around. But to do that, you basically, to reorder the way FileMaker works permanently, you have to dump the records and re-import them or something, right? And so you could dump them out of FileMaker into a JSON array, run a sort like this, then reload the JSON array into FileMaker, right? And I'll let Leland pick up the conversation on that part of it. The theoretical parts, yes. Leland, how hard would that be to do?
I'm not sure if I can answer your question because I was busy thinking about a thought I was having, which is in the example that I gave of the problem that I ran into, we had incoming data coming in from a vendor. I needed to create new records in FileMaker that contained the notes.
Okay.
I did the sort here in this tool based upon just the single field with the JSON value that came with all of the notes. I parsed that, sorted them, and then created the FileMaker records in the order that I wanted them to be. So in that instance, it kind of answered what he was wanting to do.
Yeah, you did it for new records coming in, but what if you wanted all the records? I'm just going to extend this conversation for Ken's benefit. What if I want all the records I've created over the last 10 years sorted by last name first, like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, alphabetical by last name. So you have to bring them all out into JSON, right? Some way of getting in JSON, running that process, then bringing them back, re-importing them back in.
Or in that case, you could do it the old-fashioned FileMaker way. You would simply do a sort on your found set, export them, re-import them into the same table.
Oh yeah,
Table.
yeah,
Problem solved.
yeah. Ken, I don't know if this buys you anything immediately, right?
For that particular problem, no.
You know, it's funny because I've been back to coding again, and I've been running into these like fundamentals of existence, like the fundamentals of the Claris platform. That's been basically incomplete and missing for since 1994, when the first 93 or 94 when the first FileMaker server came out, FileMaker server for FileMaker Pro 2. Things that, like, you know, this sort of stuff, like the fundamentals of the Draco engine, is that it the order in which you put them in there is the order in which they're there forever, right? So, and to change it, it's a real pain in the ass. It really is. So,
well, if we've exhausted this topic, we can move on to the next add-on.
sure. Ready? Let's go ahead and do that.
Good. I don't see any questions, so.
Okay. Rather than add to this file, I'm going to close it and create a brand new one.
Okay, great.
Another blank one. And call this one something else. Really, really unique. Leland's file 2. Yeah. Go into layout mode. Again, I've got a blank file here. We're not making any tables or field adjustments. Going straight into layout mode. Go to add-ons, click plus. Since I've already installed the add-on, it's already going to be here. There it is. I'm going to select it, choose it. There it is, and we have a new layout. Same as before, if I go into define database, we've got a brand new table, basic relationship, several new fields. And I'm going to discard changes. And I'm going to go into browse mode. And we have 2 sample records. I'm going to make this window a little bigger to get rid of some distractions from behind this window. Okay. So as we saw at the beginning,
hang on.
Go ahead.
So I turned away to respond to Ken, and I looked back, and suddenly your empty file had a bunch of stuff. Did you drag and drop your add-on in? Is that what you did? I missed that.
Yes.
Okay.
Drag the add-on onto the layout. That was it.
And that put all these 4 or elements, this whole thing together in your layout. Okay.
New table,
Okay.
several new fields, new layout, and new scripts. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, cool.
Okay. So as we showed at the beginning, this shows 2 JSON payloads side by side at the top. They both have the same keys, but one value has been changed. So we did that just for simplicity's sake, and we're going to hit the compare button, and this is what we get back. And I showed, just for demo, that's not necessary, but for demo purposes, I showed a HTML rendered version and a straight raw text version that has to be inside quotes with escaping. So you can kind of see why I created the HTML result. Looks a little prettier. Other than that, you get the same results. So what is it telling us? Well, it's telling us that there was one object, which we already knew, and that it shows a -1. That means that the key value of 1, not the value, the key of 1 was removed. The key of 1, the value of hello was removed. That's what that minus sign means. And then a new key and a new value was added.
Oh.
And it ignored 2 because it didn't change. Interesting, no? So that kind of makes sense. Let's look at something a little bit more complicated. Ooh, that looks fun. So what's the difference between these 2? Well, when we hit compare, here's the answer. Now you notice it was nice and fast. But what is it telling us? Well, it's telling us that we have a key response with an object. Inside there is a key data with an array. Inside there we have a few, it looks like we got a couple objects. And inside there, one of them has field data that changed. So inside the field data, there's a key JSON_2 with this value, and it was removed. So it becomes a little difficult, and really the amount of work involved that makes this tool useful is understanding and interpreting the results, right? But to tell you what, if you have, imagine if you will, 2 JSON payloads side by side. I can't quite do the Twilight Rooms, the Twilight Zone speak. Sorry, but I was kind of quoting him. Forgive me.
Yeah, Twilight Zone.
2 side by side JSON payloads. Imagine them being huge, and imagine that you've been told there's only one change. Oh, by the way, we're not going to tell you what the change was. That's where this tool really shines, because it'll get rid of all the fluff. It'll only show you things that are different between the 2. So interpreting the result looks kind of wild and crazy. But if you were to look in here for the key JSON underscore 2, right about here on the left-hand side, you'll notice that over here on the right, it doesn't exist. So that's pretty much what it's telling you, is that entire key value pair right there was removed. That's what the minus sign means. Okay. So let me give you the real world example of what happened that led me to create this tool. Same vendor that I was talking about before with the notes sorting issue. The JSON payloads that we exchange back and forth are very, very lengthy. They're way overkill. They really need to be slimmed way down. Basically, what they're giving us is everything plus the kitchen sink, including data that we should not be privy to. They're giving it to us anyway. So, but it's not a tool that they made. So they're relying on, third-party software that's already been created, and there's only so much modification that they can do. It works. It does what we need it to do. But we get back a very, very large payload per request. And we get back a lot of statuses, such as, we have an update for you. Oh, by the way, we're not going to tell you what the changes are. You get the drift? Oh, here's another update to the same job. Oh, we're not going to tell you what the changes are. But here's the entire results. So that's where I obviously came up with this as a possible solution to be able to compare the two from what we already have, what we got previously from them, to what they just sent us with an update. Something's changed. We don't know what. This kind of helps answer that question.
Yeah, you'd have to sit there. I mean, you're the one. We talked about this. Your vendor's supplying data to you. At what Keller Windows? Yeah. So
yeah,
pretty interesting. They're pretty advanced system that they have, including the whole React Native application. That's that training that we did about 2 months ago. But the JSON has become the standard for moving data back and forth. So it's incumbent upon developers to be prepared to deal with this stuff when it pops up. So, because if you ask for data from someone else or you give data to someone else, these days they're likely to ask for it in a JSON format.
So one of the things that I didn't do before I closed that last file, so I'm going to go back and quickly reopen it. Here is the JSON array sorting. Let's look at scripts. This handles the result. All it does is plop it into a global variable. But now that you've seen how the array sort works, let's look in the script to see exactly where all the work's being done. And it's right here. Line 40 is the entire JSON, JavaScript function that does the magic. There it is in all of its glory. So Ken, to answer your question, feel free to play around in this all you want to customize it even further. Now I will tell you just a little qualification. I did not invent this entire thing by myself. I got some help out on the interwebs from somewhere. I might have a reference in here from where I found it. Maybe, but I try to whenever I grab code from somebody else. But I think what happened is I just took a bunch of different results, put them together, made it work the way that I want. If you kind of break this down, you can see that this is what's happening if the sorting type is string. This is what's happening if it's a number. This is what's happening if it's a date timestamp. And then inside of each one of those is whether or not you've chose ascending or not. So this is the one and only thing that happens if it's a timestamp sorted ascendingly. That's just the one thing that happens. And this is if it's descending. This is a number ascending. So to break this down, it looks really complicated and confusing, but really it's just kind of a one-liner. Go ahead, Richard.
I have a question. So when you're comparing these two, you're doing this diff, D-I-F-F, is kind of a programmer industry term for comparing two things together. Mm-hmm. If you say you have two identical JSON arrays, but they're sorted differently, but the net effect is that the data is the same. Does this thing assume that they would be sorted together the same when you put them together? I missed that. Maybe I'm asking a question you've already answered, but
you're asking a question that I haven't even considered. So let's play with that. So let's go to array sorting. Here's the unsorted array. I'm going to copy that over to the diff. I'm going to create a new record and plop that in there. I'm going to go back and take the sorted version, copy it, and put it over here and compare.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It boogered it all up.
Yeah. So if you have a customer, that would be the typical vendor thing to do, would be that you ask for array, they give you an array, and they say, oh, we changed something in this array, but they may have resorted it and or maybe did no other change other than resorting it. So you'd have to have a way of kind of almost normalizing their data,
Right.
bring it in, normalize it into an order, and then compare that, I guess.
Looks that way. Sure enough.
Yeah. There was an interesting question that came up because this diff stuff came out. Winford, I think his name was Huss. Winford Huss was a big time FileMaker guy in Europe. He passed away a couple of years ago. But he owned an app called FMDiff that was
FMDiff. Yep.
Diff, and someone took it over after he passed away. But he lived a nice long life, and that's just part of the world of the FileMaker community. Some of us are getting older, but it was funny because he did a diff between two identical FileMaker files, and Ken was asking about this. And so what happened was we had a live stream back about 10 months ago, and Chris Moyer was here, and he diffed a FileMaker file that started as an FMP12 file, then he converted to a Claris file, and then we closed it. We didn't do any data change, we just did a diff. And what Claris had done with the new Claris platform file was that it had removed the accounts, any account that was not driven by, say, like Active Directory, right? Something like that, or OAuth or something. If it was like Fred Smith, password 1234, those gone, deleted, removed them out of there. And there was a couple other minor changes to it, but it was kind of aggravating because Claris had done this, trying to force everyone to use their online system without any offline access. And the community didn't buy it. There was a diff change. You can do diffs between two FileMaker files, which is really an interesting thing you can do if you're trying to figure stuff out. Now, a lot of times you use base elements or something like that, but if you want kind of the raw XML, kind of look at it a little bit, the FMDiff is pretty neat. Yeah. But yeah, it's important to have a complete set of tools at your command as you build applications. That's why these live streams are great. And you'll remember that you saw something, like tomorrow's a conversation about the notification, the transient notifications. And I remember that, and I remembered, oh yeah, it was Kyle doing that, right? And then you go back and you find the sample file and you build it in, right? So always remembering when you saw the great little demo, maybe Monkey Bread, maybe Leland.
We do have a question from Lynn. Can you show this how to compare JSON you have, take the original, remove one of the elements, and then compare the two?
Yeah, I think we covered some examples, but I think they are interested in kind of like a live example.
Yeah.
So I suppose I can take this one that's here on the screen and just do a few alterations. Like let's just create a third one.
Okay.
Like so, and we'll call this one 3. And we'll say this one is JS, and then we'll compare. And so we have the difference between these two is that the 3 key value pair, 3 in JS, was removed, 1 hello was removed, and 1 goodbye was added.
And the fact that it says 1, 2, or 3 is totally, for everyone who's just kind of new to this, is totally arbitrary. That could have been doggy, kitty, and goldfish for those words. It doesn't matter at all.
And so I think to cover that example that was requested, what happens if on this one I remove 2 world entirely? So we just have, matter of fact, let's just change this back to, so we don't have too many changes. Let's have the second and the third one removed. So there's 2 and 3 removed.
Okay.
So I think that covers what was being asked.
Lynn, if that does not answer your question, let me know.
And if we added one, since I don't know if we've done that, to the second one, rather than the first one, we'll call this one something entirely random like Richard.
Yeah.
And we'll give it a value of...
Sucks. There you go.
Clarice.
Oh, okay.
And compare that. So now we have 2 items removed, 1 added. So that kind of covers all the bases, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
Lynn's typing vigorously there. Yep. Questions. So yeah. So by the way,
this could be used to compare changes to a record?
No, this requires nothing but JSON. Now you could take, using JSON set element, you could, in a script or in a data viewer, totally take the information that's in a record and turn that into a JSON object and then compare it. So you can't do it directly just as if by magic. You would need just to do a little legwork to create your own
Yeah, this is
JSON payload to mimic a record.
This is a block of text. This is just a string. It could be any kind of string, and this is another string. So this is 2 blocks of text strings, and then this is actually a third block of text string that's telling you the changes that were made. And so really, at the end of the day, while he's doing this in FileMaker and this script runs in FileMaker, it really there's no records or fields really in here, right? I mean, it's not like a record. You got fields and you got records. That's what they're asking. You'd have to take a bunch of records and fields, turn it into JSON over here, then run the analysis, then decide what you're going to do with it. I mean, the reality is that if you had to compare 2 FileMaker tables, right? Say you have 2 tables, contacts and leads. Say you have a contacts table and a leads table, and you wanted to compare the differences between the 2 tables. Would moving it to JSON and doing this through JSON even be performant and a good idea? I mean, I'm just asking the question, right? I don't know.
What Lynn just described on Discord is exactly the scenario that I gave that we were doing ourselves with incoming note data coming in from a vendor, adding it to a live file. It's exactly, her scenario is exactly what I described earlier. Absolutely.
Okay. What FM was programmed in C++? Yeah, I think it is now, but it was originally Pascal. It got converted back in FileMaker 14 or 15. So that was in a version of Pascal, but part of
I liked my Pascal days. I love that language. I haven't used it for years.
That's one of those things. The Clay Mackel, for those of you who met Clay, big guy, nice guy, one of the nicest guy. Probably as nice as Leland is. I haven't known Leland as long, but they're both that kind of like really.
He's probably nicer.
Is he nicer than you? Okay,
maybe.
Yeah, and his job has been to, as he updates the FileMaker platform from, at the point Pascal to C++ and then various other things, to remove old code, right? Just because you install an app and it's 300 or 400 megabytes in size, there's a lot of unused shit under the hood, right? It's like when you build a FileMaker app or starting points. One of the things I'm working on, the starting point light, is removing things that aren't being used. And when you remove things that aren't being used, you hope that you don't break something important by accident. And so that's kind of what he does, right? So his job, amongst other things, is to remove the libraries and remove some of the code under the hood that they don't use anymore. They haven't used in a long time. But to ship a new version, they got to ship it, and they can't spend all day trying to remove code. So maybe the app's a little fatter than you would like it to be, but it works, and they get it out the door. And as a customer, how am I to know that a 20% or 30% or 40% of the FileMaker app is useless code they don't even call anymore, but it's just stuck in there, right? So it's an interesting question, but there you go. Yeah, so topics on the JavaScript side. So things that we've done in JavaScript, we've done basic. We haven't done one of these in a long time, doing a Google kind of charts with JavaScript, doing the gas gauge JavaScript, all the things that we use JavaScript for. I'm going to cover the notification stuff tomorrow at a very lightweight level. I'm not going to try to discuss coding it. Do we have thoughts about things that you would like to see done? Scott Kane's typing. Thoughts and ideas, right? That's what we want to do. We want to make sure we have that. Otherwise, literally, Leland's going to have nothing to do. Leland would love to have some time off, but he said he would help cover this. What's that?
Has Leland played with getting JSON from OData instead of Data API?
I have not.
Does FileMaker Server act as an OData source, or is it just it can go out and bring the data OData in? See, I don't know, right? So that's the thing. Kyle's going to answer that question probably for us. And actually, it's more of a Jacob Taylor question. We did get a customer yesterday who asked us about setting up an ARM server with the new Linux with ARM. So you get to use the Graviton processors from Amazon, the cheapest possible processors. Of course, the person says they're a Windows person, and so they don't know anything about Linux, but the price sounded attractive to them, which means that they couldn't actually support it if they needed to work on it. They need to get someone else to help them with the support. So that's always interesting. It's like, I hate using an Apple server in my home for my personal stuff. I'd rather have an Amazon server, but the Mac server here I can wrestle with and deal with, and a Linux or a Linux server on Amazon, outside my skill set. I have other skills. I have other very important skills, but that's not one of them. So Leland, what's on tap next week for you? Because you still had a topic for next week, correct?
Yeah, latency.
What's that?
JavaScript and latency.
Oh, you're going to walk us through that code and how it works in detail. Is that the plan for next week? What is my latency?
We could. I have a feeling that we kind of already covered it a little bit. I don't know. We can recover it. We can remember the first one that you had me come in on a Friday a long time ago that you were covering, and we kind of went through what is my latency.
About a little bit, yeah. But tomorrow, the one for next week should be a deep dive into that JavaScript.
Okay. All right. Very good.
You're using the the ping function out of the terminal. Is that how you're doing that? Or is it curl?
I'm using insert from URL. I'm using some curl options.
And curl talks to the command line, or that. Didn't talk to command line, but it's. What did you say last week? What it had to do with the command line?
Curl is something that we can use in the command line. It's just a utility, but it suspiciously acts very similar to insert from URL inside a FileMaker script step. So I have a suspicion, without running it past Clay first, that maybe insert from URL inside FileMaker is actually under the hood using curl.
Ah, that very well could be. You can run curl as a command line. Yeah, that was it. That was what I was remember being said. So somehow there was this cross conversation between curl and the command line. I've been doing some command line stuff lately, but not to the level that Leland and Kyle and David and some of you folks do it with. So
with Postman, it auto generates a curl command for you that you can copy and paste into the terminal and does the same thing that we were doing in Postman. And you didn't have to write the curl command yourself. Postman was doing it for you. So that was what I was showing off.
Ah, okay, good. All right, well, we'll see Moki in 2024. We'll see all you. Have a good one. Bye. Got a report of an individual up here who may be a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir!